Traumatic cinematic, bitches.
Check us out, traumaticcinematic.com. Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to the Traumatic Cinematic Show. Like always, I'm Mugumbo, and we're bringing you yet another very special edition podcast of something that isn't just a movie review discussion. We actually had the opportunity to go to Horror Hound Weekend 2013, September, 7th through the 9th or whatever it might have been. Regardless, we sat in on Charles Band, Mr. Full Moon himself, you know, the guy that made Puppet Master and all these little miniature monsters, Doll Man and Terrorvision and, oh, golly gee whiz, Ginger Dead Man and the Evil Bong. Well, he was at Horror Hound Weekend hawking videotapes, and he did a panel. We captured the entire panel, folks, and it's kind of interesting, it's kind of cool, and it's kind of a sales pitch. Tune in, enjoy, and stay tuned.
I don't hear it. We're about okay. So you guys, you've seen Laser Blast, haven't you, on Mystery Science Theater? For those of you, yeah, it's probably one of the strangest ones of all. That one went well, didn't it? Laser Blast. Okay. You just played clips from Laser Blast. Yeah. All right. What a bizarre crowd! You guys look awesome. You look amazing. You should stand up and show people how cool you look. Look at this dude. You gotta give him a hand. We got hot chicks in the audience. So are some people here for Full Moon? Raise your hand if you're here for Full Moon. Oh, whoa, dude, it's awesome. I didn't know where to begin. I got 20 minutes, and I could tell 200 hours of bizarre stories since we're about to make our 270th movie. That's pretty weird. So how about just to start a question, just for fun, and I'll get into some stuff I want to talk about. Anybody got a bizarre, happy, fun question? Yes.
How did you come to work with Stuart Gordon?
How did I come to work with Stuart?
Yeah.
Stuart, I had a company in the 80s before Full Moon called Empire, and Stuart, thank you. Stuart was a friend of a fellow named Brian Usna, who was a producer at Stuart Organic Theater. For those of you who don't know, had already a hell of a background, and they kind of came knocking on our door. My dad was involved with me at the time, and was the one who, would read scripts and interview directors, because we were always looking for new directors, and that was always a challenge because you didn't want to hire a bad new director. So suddenly Stuart was, brought up, and we sat down, and we talked about doing this adaptation, and Brian Usna was with him. And what really made me excited about bringing Stuart into the fold was his theater experience, having formed organic theater, having worked with actors, because the technology today is kind of easy for everyone. Everyone can kind of make a movie, right? And a lot of those movies are getting made. Not a lot of them are really very good, unfortunately. A lot of them are, which is always great to find something exceptional. But, for someone who has the background in theater, who knows how to work with actors, and anyway, Stuart had all of that. And the spin he wanted to put on Reanimator was really awesome. So we took a chance, and we did a deal. And then I've made, I think, 9 movies with Stuart. We went on to making From Beyond and Dolls and Robot Jocks, which was way before Pacific Rim. I don't know. I hate to say stuff because I don't want to be mean, but have you guys seen Pacific Rim?
It was like an insult to people that love kanji, like the big monsters. It's like they.
Well, thanks. Well, I mean, I was into it because I love it.
It was movies. Neat, but it just didn't pay off like I wanted it to.
It was definitely had to have been somewhat inspired by Robot Jocks. I mean, that guy was a fan of big robot movies. We made the first movie ever about battling robots. How could he not have seen it, and say in interviews, well, I saw it was part of it. Now, come on, Guillermo,
Yeah.
Anyway, no, I was not a big fan. I'm not a fan of CGI, and that's the other problem that separates a lot of these movies. I love organic effects, and these CGI films, they just look like cartoons to me. And that's why even in our limited way, with our tiny budgets, we keep making movies that have real creatures and monsters and puppets and dolls. And Obviously, we can't afford the huge monsters yet, but the puppets are pretty cool, and they're in the room, when we're on the set with the actors, so there's no phony baloney, nothing. Because I think no matter how good you are, when you're performing against a blue screen or a green screen, and there's nothing there, it just feels there's a disconnect. And then ultimately, no matter how good the animators are, I just don't think it's that real. Some people love CGI. I'm just not a super fan. And that was one of my problems with Pacific Rim as well. At least Robot Jox, every robot was built. Like, we were in the desert. We had these big robots and models and stop motion guys. And I'm a huge fan of stop motion, which is also kind of a dying art. Anyway, does that kind of answer the question? I don't know. I got distracted there.
And when you got to me, was Hit the Pendulum one of the first full movies?
No, the first full moons, and that's apropos of someone I'm going to bring up here in just a moment, but the first full moon film, well, the first one was Puppet Master. That did really well, luckily. And then we made some, I think Hit the Pendulum was maybe the 10th or 12th, another Stuart Gordon film that we shot in Italy. So, and we're developing something right now, Stuart and I, so we're hoping to make another one. We made Castle Creek. Did anyone see Castle Creek?
Oh, yeah.
Castle Creek. Yeah, we want to make Son of Castle Creek, but it's hard today. So one of the things we're doing, which I wanted to talk about, if I had a few props and some fun things, I'd tell you a Gary Busey story, because those are awesome.
Oh, yeah. How could they not?
The guy is bizarre. I worked with him for one day, and I seriously have 20 stories. They never end. He was chasing girls. He was doing weird stuff. He was channeling stuff. But trying not to make this like a stand-up routine. But Gary Busey was awesome. And actually, working with Tommy Chong on Evil Bond was also a thrill. So some of you may know we just did a team-up movie, which will be out in about 3-4 weeks on our streaming site, called The Ginger Dead Man versus the Evil Bond. And that's just to show you how serious we can go. But it's a fun movie, and it's better if you're high, If you, as a matter of fact, yeah, it's way better. So rewinding, Hit the Pendulum was great. That was a great movie to make with Stuart. Okay, one more question, and I want to talk about something else. Yes, dude.
A B movie Expendables.
Make a B movie Expendables?
Yes,
led
by Tim.
The movie I made in the 80s called Eliminators. That was, you got to check that out.
I will.
Pre, all the superhero team-up movies.
But led by Tim Thomerson.
Eliminators here? Wow, 2 dudes. Okay, that's good. It's a good one.
I will have to look that up. But led by Tim Thomerson.
Led by Thomerson.
Yes, I believe there's just not enough of them.
Thomerson was Jack Death, and Thomerson was also Dollman. And Thomerson always wanted to make a movie as Jack Death and Dollman, where one or the other, I'm not sure, would kick the other's ass. So they would have sort of a fight, him playing both characters. Bizarre concept. All right, one more question, then I'll talk about some stuff. Yes? Questions? It's just me, dudes. Ask a question. Now I can tell people are going. Yes, sir.
Okay. My Toys, Puppet Master, Evil Dolls. Do you have an affinity or a particular
fetish
history with
for little fuckers and little puppets? Yeah, because this is actually a good story. I do, because people say, well, it's because you make low-budget movies and they're small and you can afford to make movies with small characters. And that's somewhat true, but the idea of inanimate objects, especially small inanimate objects, coming to life have always kind of fascinated me. Again, a big fan of stop-motion animation, and early on in my career, I was lucky enough to work with David Allen, wonderful stop-motion animator, protege of Ray Harryhausen. We made Laser Blast. That was the first movie I made with him when he animated those aliens. And many movies after that. And so that fascinated me. But I think what really kicked it into high gear was the Karen Black episode of Trilogy of Terror. Not that there was any real stop motion. There may have been a few shots, but I just thought, I want to make that movie. Hey, welcome, dudes. You're not here for me, right? I can tell. Because everything's running behind. So what is the next thing coming up? I don't want to
Nightmare on Elm Street 2 panel.
Nightmare on Elm Street, okay. So, Castle Freak. Okay, dude, you just came, right? Yeah, because we were talking about Castle Freak, which was an awesome movie to make. And we do want to make Son of Castle Freak. We're thinking about that. Let's do it. But, I think the inanimate objects coming to life, and especially as that works with stop motion and rock puppetry, was always fascinating, but it was Trilogy of Terror and Karen Black that really made it exciting. And it was an honor to work with her on maybe her last movie, one of her last movies. I made a bizarre film called Ooga Booga, which I advise you guys to see because it's just so freaking inappropriate. I mean, it's just, that's what you want to see. And we introduced some strange characters that will appear later in other movies. But I worked with Stacy Keach, who I've been a super fan of, and Karen Black, and she was great. She was already in not great health. You know, she had to sort of sit down after every take, which was kind of a bummer to watch. But if you've seen the movie, we sort of emulate a couple of the moments from Trilogy of Terror. Because her being chased around by that African doll, I thought was the bomb, you know. That's sort of where it all came from. But in the limited times, I don't want to run over these people here coming in on their next dealio. All right, so here's a weird thing that's happening to us and to people who love movies. As a filmmaker who started off when the delivery of films was theatrical, that's how you saw my movies. Usually the B movie and a double bill back a long time ago. Then that went into the whole video deal, and I was sort of the first guy there. As an independent, I started Media Home Entertainment, and I started Wizard Video in 1980, before I was born. And then I started... Anyway, I was a big video guy, and all the early Empire movies were fueled by the video sort of business. And then it all became DVD, which we're all familiar with. I know that VHS looks like an antique today, and I have friends who have kids who don't know what it is. You know, it's like looking at an old Laserdisc. What is that? But now the DVD is essentially going to become extinct, not because people don't dig it and people are not into Blu-ray, but there are no more stores for us to send our movies to. I mean, when you think of it, we make films, we try to recover those costs by making DVDs, and we used to ship them a heartbeat ago to Blockbuster in Hollywood and Tower Records.
They're gone.
The Warehouse, and they are literally all gone. You know, the only place left where people can rent a movie today is Redbox.
And Netflix. Netflix wants to steal from you.
Digital thing, and you're right.
It's like giving your media away, just giving your films away.
I know. You guys, you are awesome. I'm
on
my side to fight the battle, dude.
No, I'm with you, man. Like.
No, it's true. So
you're the West Coast Hoy Kaufman.
We've been in Redbox a bunch, so we're lucky that we're able to do that. But the problem is Redbox is not a store. You know, it's a machine, and it only has like 8 or 10 slots for independent movies, and they get about 200 submitted every month. So you'll never be able to see any of the older films because it's only about a new movie. So not to say anything wrong about Redbox, it's great that there's one last weird place to see movies. But there's no other way for us to get the movies out unless you go into the digital world. And as this dude was talking about, the digital world is pretty much controlled by major studios. And it's been that way forever, I guess, in all media. But for a while, especially the early days of video, that's when independence really flourished. You know, for better or for worse, all these movies that a lot of you are in love with, and we hear, and we visit people who've been in them, these came into the video stores. And those days aren't coming back. They're not coming back in terms of physical goods. But they can as far as streaming, you know, and being able to go online and fill your screen up. Eventually everyone's going to have the kind of smart TV you can go anywhere you want. Now you can do it on a Roku box, you can watch it, you know, on a mobile. So about a year and a half ago, I thought, wow, this is a bummer, because unless you get a place to show your movie, there's no more business. You know, you can't even recover our modest little budget. So I started a movie streaming site, which has taken a while, because it's kind of expensive to make it all work well, and it just launched a week ago. And that's in large part why I'm here, because we now have a ton of our movies up there, more are coming up every week. We have endless amount of behind-the-scenes footage, which I love doing. I was like the first guy back a long time ago. You know, if you guys remember the Video Zone, you know, that's when, after the movie, you got to see how the movie was made and interviews with the actors and see how the special effects were done. And when I released Puppet Master, we got, back then, this is before email, we got thousands of letters from kids who just not only loved the movie, but they loved seeing how those puppets were animated. Loved seeing that Pinhead, even though it was like a little puppet, we had a little dwarf whose hands were the hands of Pinhead, you know, and all the stop motion animation stuff. So I thought, well, one thing I can do that's different on this streaming site is not only put up the movies, but put up all the original behind-the-scenes footage on these movies, because back in the day, this was a bummer, like Paramount, who distributed us for a while. I went to them, I said, you know, I had this idea to do something called the Video Zone, so people watch the movie, and then they get to see kind of how the movie was made, and they said, nah, because that's going to cost us more money to give you another 10 minutes of tape, right? Because it was VHS tape. I said, well, what is it going to cost? They said, well, it could be another 10 cents. I said, dude, it's like, fuck, man. You know, I'll pay the 10 cents because I think people are going to enjoy it. They said, well, how are you going to monetize these are the conversations you have with big studios. How are you going to monetize this extra effort? I said, well, first of all, I'm paying for it. And secondly, it's not money really, it's just doing something cool for people who are into these movies. Anyway, I won the award, they deducted the 10 cents because they're fuckers. And, it's true. And so this Video Zone thing happened, and for those of you who remember, it was kind of the first time anyone ever did that. Now with DVD, you got all the added value stuff, it's kind of a normal deal. But what I did is, in order to shoot those 10 minutes that were cut down, that little making of, I usually shot 4 or 5 hours of footage about how these movies were made back to even the late 80s. So I kept all of it because I don't throw anything away. So now on this site, which just launched, full movie streaming, you got the movies, we're putting them up every week. You got lots of stuff no one's ever seen before that's, I think, very fascinating. For those of you who like Castle Freak, or you're a Stuart Gordon fan, or you're in the Subspecies, which we shot completely in Romania and Transylvania, it's stuff no one's ever seen before. So all that's going up. And then we have our new movies. So if for instance, our latest super gem, Ginger Dead Man versus the Evil Bomb. If you want to wait till November, you can see it on DVD at Redbox or whatever. But we're going to have it up in 3 weeks on our site. Okay. So the promotion, because I got to talk about this, right? To stay in business is if you come visit our booth. Some of you have. I see you guys have been there. You sign up. We have wonderful people signing up. It's only $6.99, so that's not a lot of money. We'll give you 2 free DVDs, so that's cool, right? So if you're really, really like a prick, what you can do is you can, that's terrible, what did I say? Oh, you guys are surprised. But you can sign up for $6.99 and then cancel and get 2 free DVDs. But we're hoping that what we've put together, isn't that terrible? I don't know why it's so like inappropriate. But if you like what we're doing, and I think you will, we will put so many movies up and so much behind the scenes material and contests and giveaways. We're planning some really weird stuff. Treasure hunts, like in Ginger Dead Man versus Evil Bomb, to make it even more exciting. I've hidden these golden moons in about 8 different scenes that are going to be a little tricky to find. And the first 100 people who find them and email us are going to get, I don't know, free weed or something awesome. Anyway. It's cool. Hopefully you'll support it. We're here till tomorrow, signing people up. The site is really, really awesome. You won't be able to get it yet at Time Warner because we can't do that. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose by Time Warner taking 80% of our revenue. So it's online, it's mobile, Roku box, and that kind of stuff. So we're excited about that because it gives us the ability to really do things that we want to keep wanting to do, which are things that are not normal. You don't make a movie like The Animator and all the movies I've made over the years if you're going to stick to some sort of pattern, because people said, are you crazy? You can't show that shit. I said, but that's awesome. You should be able to show it. So one thing I sort of want to close with is, for me as a filmmaker, it's trying to survive, theatrical and VHS and Betamax and Laserdisc and DVD, and now we're in the digital world. Having made all these movies is finding amazing talent. I've been so lucky to work with so many people who have gone on to become either big stars or well-known filmmakers. I made a weird movie called Intruder that killed Sam Raimi. We hung him up on a meeting. That's pretty weird. But there are other people like Demi Moore and others who have been in my films, Viggo Mortensen. So what's really awesome right here, right now at Horror Hound. Whose phone is that? Dude, don't you hate when you go to a movie theater and someone's on the fucking phone? Don't you want to kill them? I'm so mild as a person. I'll forgive anything, but when someone's in front of me and they got the iPhone or some phone on in the middle of a dramatic moment, I want to kill them. If something comes out, I just want to jump on their head. It's really bad. That's a problem. So anyway, here's how lucky I am. Here's how lucky I am. So I don't even know how to transition into this, but there are 2 super hot, awesome, talented actresses here. Sherilyn Fenn is here too. I think she's signing, and she's amazing. And I did a movie called Meridian with Sherilyn. But in the early, I won't say the years, I started to make these wonderful movies, early full moon films. And super talented Megan Ward was in these films. She made The first film was Crash and Burn, which also had a giant robot. It was real, it wasn't no fucking CGI thing. And then we made Trancers 2. When Jack Death had two wives, which I can tell you is a problem from some experience. You don't want to have two wives. That's wrong. It's a bad joke. But anyway, she was in there. And then she made Arcade, which was also way ahead of our time. So on one hand, you have Megan, who's so involved and so awesome and so beautiful in these full moon films. And then, because I'm going to have them come up at the same time, then you have Robin Sidney, who's been in movies, other than movies that you may know that I didn't make, like The Lost and some other weird movies, I forget their names. But, you know, how do you play against Gary Busey as a pissed off cook in The Ginger Man? You know, you have to have a lot of talent and some cojones to do that. So that was our first movie together. And she went on to do other Ginger Dead Man and Evil Bong and Skullhead. So I'm just honored to have these two wonderful talents here, Megan Ward and Robin Sidney. Come on up. Come on, girls. Hot girls. Hot girls. You take the phone?
Yeah, I need to take the phone.
Okay. Okay, well. Here, come here. See, Meg, here. Okay, Robin Sidney.
That's why I watch all my movies at home. Yeah. So that nobody interrupts them and I can have a cocktail at the same time.
It's cheaper.
So I just want to introduce myself. My name is Megan Ward, and Mr. Charles Band gave me my first job in a little movie called Crash and Burn. And he actually made me screen test. And you did. It was me and my friend J.C. Brandy. Do you remember?
No.
Okay. Anyway, she's still around. You can Facebook her.
Thank you.
But anyway, I remember I was already nervous enough to actually have an official screen test for my potentially first big job, leading role in a movie. And as I was going into the little studio, which was probably a warehouse somewhere.
For sure.
Yeah. With no air conditioning or something
For
like
sure.
that. And I didn't know any better. And as I was walking in, I bumped into this beautiful woman and looked in her eyes, and it was Sherilyn Fenn. And she was doing pickups for Pit Pendulum.
This is all new to me.
Yeah.
I was there.
So I was already nervous enough, and then behold the gorgeous Sherilyn Fenn.
That's sweet.
But somehow I triumphed and won the job.
Yes, and she's wonderful in the movie. And then jump cut a couple years later, Robin Sidney, similar, but we didn't do a screen test.
No.
But just listen.
That's old school days.
To act with Gary Busey, because if you've seen Ginger Dead Man, there's a scene where he threatens her and he thinks he kills her. Okay? You know the story, right? It is pretty scary. So
My phone got scared.
that's because I'm standing wrong. So that was a phone call. But anyway, Robin comes in. She's barely, how old were you?
20.
She was 20, and she was amazing. But she got. This is part of my.
So we were both 20, and Charlie likes them young, ladies and gentlemen. and Charlie gave me my first movie as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have to tell Gary Busey's story.
You can't tell Gary Busey's story.
Yes.
Because they're all nasty, and this audience is so sweet.
I want to know Gary.
No, they're wrong. They're involved. You can't tell Gary. I want to focus on you girls. Okay? But she was scared to death
Come
because
by the table, and she'll tell you a great
because Gary Busey, you know, I knew obviously going into it. I knew his reputation. When it comes to that kind of stuff, I'm fearless. I mean, I work with Klaus Kinski. Okay, you guys know who he is. I made a movie called Crawl Space where he threatened the director with a gun because he was not happy with not having enough close-ups in the movie. It's true. So if you know Crawl Space, and you know Gary Busey, whatever, right? But working with him for a day was a trip and a half, and he scared the death out of her. He really did. He was chasing around the set, then he would disappear. Then the kind of semi-attractive, like wardrobe chick was gone. People were worried. Then we couldn't find Gary. The stories, and this is like just a light intro story, but it was amazing working with Rob.
And we just, thank you, and it was amazing working with you. We just filmed Evil Bong versus Ginger Dead Man, which is so much fun. and I get to play two characters, which is awesome, but there's actually, in the Bong world, that Gary Busey pops his head out again.
Yeah, it's true. We have some material that has never been shown, And I'm sure Gary will be really happy because he talks about gay aliens and shit, you know? And I figured, I've got to use this material one day somewhere. Because we shot it when we shot the original Ginger Dead Man. And, you know, he just goes off on a tangent. So I saved this. So there's a moment where the Ginger Dead Man, who's got Gary's spirit in him, if you can believe this, he's in the Bond world, which is already weird. And on the side of a rock, Gary Busey, who he wants to become again, because he's a dude, and the cookie can't do shit, right? Can't pump the hot chicks, can't do anything. Is that inappropriate? Okay, I'm just trying to talk. So anyway, there's a moment where he sees himself as Gary Busey, and I found a way to use all that weird footage. So it's one of the things you can look forward to as future subscribers to our awesome website.
Yeah, and there's like a bunch of interviews of you and bloopers from Crash and Burn.
And things, getting everything wrong. I don't know. I'm a little nervous. If you all watch it, let me know and tell me what I do for it.
Yeah.
No, what's really great is having had, I don't know, been lucky to think, gosh, people may enjoy watching how these movies are made and listening to these actors talk about their experience. So yeah, dating back to whenever, I can't remember the year, like 2-3 years ago, Megan's talking about, you know, and all the blooper reels are awesome because you were very funny when you messed up, you know. It was pretty cool. So,
I never mess up. What are you talking about?
well, you didn't mess up.
Tell your story you told me.
No, I know that there's one where I was very intense in Transfers 3 and this action sequence and we had to get the bad guys and with Stephen Mock, I worked with several times, and I was ordering people around and all of a sudden Tim Thomerson stops the scene and he's like looking around and looking at everybody. I'm like, fuck, I'm acting! Apparently I called him Tim instead of Jack and had no idea and everybody had shut down production, but I kept going because that's what a true professional does.
You did.
Right.
And one of the moments you'll see, because we've been finding this footage that in many cases has been in storage for 20 years, so there's a great bit of business with Tim and Helen Hunt and Megan Ward, just for 20 minutes, just talking about making the movies. And remember, Tim, you guys were cracking up, the three of you.
All I did is laugh. Like Tim.
You laughed a lot.
That's all I did.
No, but it was nice, and you occasionally said something cute, everyone laughed, and Tim laughed, exactly. So, I mean, seriously, I know there's more people for other stuff, and I have stories about probably everything that's going on here, like Nightmare on Elm Street. Is that what you're here for? No. Yeah. Nightmare on Elm Street? Okay, all right. I have a good story, but yeah. Didn't Rennie Harlan direct one? 4. He directed number 4, okay. See, there's a connection everywhere. So I made a movie called Prison, which was the first film that Viggo Mortensen was in. And Rennie Harlan, I gave him his first, let's say his first directing gig in the States. Then I was called by Bob Shea at New Line saying, listen, I'm making this Nightmare sequel. Would you recommend working with Rennie? But I can't finish the story because I don't tell bad stories. So anyway, that's kind of the deal. Any last question? Because look, how rare is it? I mean, how beautiful. Let's give a hand for these beautiful girls. I can't tell you how hard it is waking up and working with beautiful women who are talented. It is, you think you got it tough, whatever you guys do, so difficult. So difficult. Any last question that we can, just a fun question, silly, light, nothing controversial? Yes? Oh, you're just waving? Yes, please, over there.
What was it like shooting subspecies in Transylvania? Because wasn't that after the Civil War was going on?
It was. There were like freaking mortar holes everywhere, and all of Bucharest, which used to be called, the question was, what was it like shooting subspecies and all those shows in Romania and Transylvania back in the early 90s? Now, have some of you seen Subspecies? Okay. It's a pretty cool vampire tale, and because I know I need to wrap it up because I hate eating into other people's time, a lot of that's on the site because we found 20-odd hours of material of what it was like to be in Romania right after the fall of Ceausescu. And all I can say is that since we had these wonderful actors here, we were the first Western people to make a movie there. People thought we were crazy. This was a country that, just had been 30 years under dictatorship, essentially communist country. They just, huge revolution, blood still in the streets. And we show up with our cameras and our actors, and we're going to make a movie about fucking vampires. So First of all, the Romanians think that's bullshit. You know, they're not into that. For them, it's a folk tale that Western people believe in. So if you see some of the material and some of the interviews with these Romanians, they're like, what? Oh, yeah, well, there's no vampires here. But they had some pretty cruel leaders like Vlad the Impaler who impaled people and stuff. But in any case, making that movie there opened up a whole world because I eventually built a studio and made about 150 movies in Romania. But making that first movie there, for some, not me, because I grew up in weird countries, was terrifying because, you know, the airport at that time when you arrived from LAX looked like something out of Midnight Express. You know, it was terrifying and horrific. And all these young kids who were probably 18 with these huge guns, and they're all dressed like real weird people. And, you know, just getting off the plane was scary. We had some actors, some Americans, who would get off the plane in those first few years and just wait for the next plane out. You know, sorry, dude, we can't make your movie. This country sucks, you know. And then many people were brave enough to stay and make the movies. And Romania, little by little, became super awesome. I mean, 40, 50 years ago, it was Budapest, or Bucharest was known as the Little Paris. It was a beautiful city. So the experience, which is vast, in making so many movies from 91, 92 to 2000, and building that studio, a lot of that is captured in that footage I was telling you guys about. Because I had a wonderful documentary filmmaker come out there and shoot, not just us making the movie, but shoot and capture what it was like for Romanians who had never seen anything like this, to see us crazy Americans and the actors who were always drunk, right? Because back in those days, you could get an incredible meal. I mean, I'm talking 3-course meal, Western meal, wine, wonderful wine, the whole shebang for $1. Maybe $1.10, you know, if you really went crazy.
And now we know why you really went to Romania to shoot.
That's why we went to duh. I mean, people say, did you go to Romania to save money? I go, no, so we can make cooler movies and our little budget, you know, buys more stuff and drink really good cheap wine. Anyway, it's a long answer, but look, thank you for listening to all this. We could go on forever. When you make, someone has one last question?
Can I make a comment?
Oh, a comment can be scary, yes. But where are you? Wait here. Oh, over there, okay. Hi.
Megan Ward. Yes.
Yes.
You, regarding General Hospital.
Yes.
You were the best on there, and when you left, that was horrible.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For those of you from, this is a whole other genre. I've here for a few years. Right on. It's good to see you too.
And I agree with you, even though I've not seen her in General Hospital.
I was the best ever.
But I will tell you, just to prove the point that everything is strangely connected, I made a movie called Parasite in 1980 or 81, starring a very young Demi Moore. After that movie came out, Demi started getting more and more well-known. She was on General Hospital, and she and I were very friendly. So twice during the week, for whatever reason, because I was pretty busy making movies, she said, come on, drive me to the set, it's awesome, check it out, because we're pals. And so I was actually on the set at General Hospital many years before you.
And it hasn't changed.
And it hasn't changed. Anyway, thank you all so much. Thank you for watching the movie.